Hey guys, welcome back to yet another episode of Top Billers Toolkit, where me and my twin brother interview top billers from all around the globe to unlock the secrets to their success. Today's guest is Stephanie Bateman. Stephanie's story is nothing short of extraordinary. From leaving home at 15 to then getting kicked out of college and struggling to hold down a job, her life seemed to be going in a downward spiral. But then she had her beautiful baby girl, and in her words, as soon as I had my daughter, it completely changed everything. I now had someone else that relied on me. Fast forward to today, and she runs a multi-million-pound recruitment firm. Today's episode is all about her story. So grab a cuppa or a glass of wine, depending on when you're listening to this, and let's get into it, shall we? Hey Steph, how are you?
Hey, yeah, really good, thank you. How are you guys?
Yeah, very good. I've been wanting to get you on the pod for ages. I've been kind of stalking you in the background. Sounds really weird, but I've been looking at you on podcasts. You have a really cool story and you've done very well for yourself. You've got a brilliant business and I wanted to get you on so you could share your wisdom. So thank you very much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I love talking about recruitment, so I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. So we always start the pod with this same question, and it's what's the number one tool in your toolkit, whether it be a mindset, strategy, or software? What would you say, Steph?
Mindset, definitely.
Amount of people that say mindset is insane. Like everyone says mindset, but it shows you how important it is. Sorry, Steph, go ahead.
Yeah.
What specifically around mindset?
Mindset is the forefront of everything that you do. So you could have the software and you could have a strategy, but if you don't have the right mindset, then neither of them will work. And it's every day in recruitment, you're faced with problems. So if you can have the mindset to focus on the solutions and not be derailed by the negatives that come up throughout the day, it's a roller coaster. That if your mindset's in the right place, you'll always be able to overcome everything that's put in front of you. So I definitely say mindset, like other people.
Yeah, and it makes so much sense, Steph. What I'm interested about mindset, I was interviewing a £1 million biller yesterday, and the interesting thing about his mindset is he kind of had this built-in mindset. He just was quite resilient. He was obsessed, and he didn't need to do much in order to kind of maintain a good mindset. I'm the opposite. My habits are like, if my habits slip, my mindset slips. So as long as I have good habits, my mindset's at the top of its game, if that makes sense. But I'm interested, how does your mindset work? Did you need to develop it over many years? Are you kind of just naturally quite strong-minded? What's your take on that?
I think it's definitely developed over the years. And that's been something that I've invested in myself and spent time on, because you like along the way from, I guess, when I first started or had any challenges in life, it was, how do I deal with it? How do I keep on track? How do I move forward from this place? And so working on it helped me understand like little tricks. So it could be something as one thing that sticks with me quite a lot is if there was something negative that happened, or I had a negative thought about something, I'd write down a positive to it. And
Cool.
There's always something that you can write down as a positive. And by doing that over a period of time, your mind just naturally does it itself. And so you don't have to keep writing it down. I think that was something that helped a lot. I did courses. There's one course which I had a great experience from doing it, and it really changed my life around how I used to deal with situations and how I would approach things personally, professionally. And it was a company that's called Landmark. And it's something that just everybody has their own experience doing it, but something that helped me see things from me rather than looking at someone else and thinking, well, that person should be doing that, or this person should be doing that. Actually, what can you do, and what's controllable for you to be able to actually adapt or change a situation, rather than expecting outcomes from other things that perhaps are out of your control. And so that was really, really helpful. Helped me work on my communication. And so definitely mindset is something that I've had to work on. And I think people that would have met me 10 years ago at the beginning of my recruitment career and would meet me now would say that I'm quite a different person.
Yeah,
love that.
Sorry, Ben, go ahead.
I was gonna say I love that tip as well. I feel like it's so simple, but it's so important to program your mind to think of the positives. I do the same thing. Like every morning, for some reason, when I get in the shower, sorry for people to envisage that, don't envisage it, but when I get in the shower, that's when that's when negative thoughts start to creep in. First thing in the morning, for some reason, I don't know why. It's when my guard is down. That's when it's the most important time for me to think of 5 positive things in my life, and it really helps. Just doing that every day makes such a big difference. And it sounds almost silly saying it to some people who probably aren't used to it, but it makes such a big difference. It really does. So yeah, really great tip. Steph, really like that one.
Yeah. And I've said this like 1,000 times in the podcast, but I have a gratitude journal. And every day before I start work, I just write down as many things as I can before I get bored of what I'm grateful for. And that is, and I was driving in the car on the way to get a coffee this morning, and the gratitude just popped into my head randomly. And it was quite fascinating. It's like my brain is training itself, or I'm training my brain just to naturally gravitate towards being grateful. And I was like, oh, I'm grateful I have a car. I'm grateful that I'm going to go buy a latte and I have money to buy a latte, because in some parts of the world, they can't do that. You know what I mean? So it was like
it's everything. Yeah. It's so true. I think journaling is something else. I didn't even think about that. Is something that I do as well. And it's super simple. I find I don't do it every day because people are like, oh, you know, do you do that every day, or how do you do it? I don't do it every day. I'd say I do it at the times where I'm finding things a little bit challenging. And I just need to kind of recheck what's happening and sort of go back to the basics of what I know helps. And a part of that journal is what you're grateful for. And literally the things that you said, Sam, you know, the thing, being able to have money to buy, so I don't drink coffee, but tea for me, it's just like, I'm grateful for doing that. It's like you said, people don't have that. So yeah, there's so many things, and that does really help channel out the kind of things that you're focused on at that time that perhaps are a little bit negative or you're a bit stopped by.
Definitely. I would love to jump into your story now, Steph, because one thing I was fascinated about is your story. I feel like some people start their career with a bit of an easier journey. I feel like you had a bit of a tougher journey, but I'm fascinated with people that go through a bit of a tougher journey and how that impacts their mindset, you know, and then how they kind of climb out of that and work their way to the top. And I feel like you're a perfect example of that. So for people that don't know, and correct me if I'm getting any of these facts wrong, Steph, but you became a young mum at 18 years old. And I believe you started your recruitment career at 18 as well. Can you just tell us a bit about that period? Because I've got a 6-month-old now. I'm 30. And I love her to pieces, but it's definitely been a massive challenge while running a business. So I can only imagine at 18, I didn't have to tie my shoelaces. So I can't imagine going through that similar thing. What was that like during that period? And how could you just give us some insight into what that period of your life was like?
Yeah, thank you. It's funny because when you describe it how you do, I look back and I just think, oh, you know, it's just part of life. And but I guess when you speak to people, it is different. You know, not that many people have a child that young, and then, you know, go on and make a career and stuff like that. So I guess I look back and I'm proud of it. I think it was when some of the key things that helped me through that period is I was going in a direction in my life which wasn't great. You know, I left home at the age of 15. You know, my family life at home was at a point where I wouldn't say it was very stable, and I didn't enjoy being at home, and I was kind of grasping onto anything around that I thought was a bit more of a normal life. And was naive in having a child that young, but it was that you know, everyone says that classic saying of everything happens for a reason, and I genuinely believe it did, because I don't know where I would be if I didn't have my daughter at 18, because I was on a road to I got kicked out of college. They wouldn't let me back because I didn't attend enough. I had been in trouble quite a bit, and I was like struggling to hold down jobs. I didn't have any money. And then when I had my daughter, I was like, oh my God, I actually have to look after a human being. And it just completely changed my mindset. It took time, absolutely, because it wasn't just like I had her and then I was suddenly a new person. It was just a realization that I had a responsibility for someone else that made me start to think, okay, what do I need to put in place to actually make my life work? There was other factors as well. Like I hated the thought that other people just thought that I was just going to kind of go on like benefits and stuff and that would be it. And I wanted to prove people wrong as well. But at the crux of it, it's you need to have money to be able to put to eat, to be able to put a roof over your head. And so that was like my first driver, was like, okay, I just need to make money. So in order to do that, I was like, right, I need to finish my degree. So I did that. And then the second thing was, so I was doing my degree, I needed to do a job that would work around childcare. So I used to work nights so that she was asleep. I was with her dad at the time, so he was there in the evenings. And it was basically like a commission only job. So those people used to sell like shots and stuff in nightclubs. I was literally doing that. But it paid the bills and it helped. And then I finished my degree. And then after finishing my degree, I already knew I wanted to get into a career, and I'd been researching it and looking at what it was that I wanted to do. And actually doing a degree helped that. A lot of people say degrees can be a waste of time, but it helped it because it helped me understand how to research, how to put together a business plan, for example, how to do things that I've actually used in my future life. Then I tried to go into one of the kind of career routes that I looked at, because I was quite good at maths, was management consultancy. I only tried a couple of companies. I didn't get into them. It was graduate schemes. And I was looking around at what other people were doing. And my sister was in recruitment and she was doing quite well financially. And so I didn't know much about it, but I was like, okay, let me try this. She gave me a bit of advice as to what companies to go to. And all throughout that kind of period of me choosing the career and bringing up my daughter, it absolutely was tough. But I think it's just about making a choice, being disciplined and sticking to it. And people are great at making excuses. The reason why they're not going to do something, the reason that they decide to not stick to the thing that they were setting out as a goal. And it's just really simple. You just need to do it. And some people will stop and think, right, there's a reason that I can't. Let's say, for example, it's the evening. Okay, we know our energy's low in the evening. So you've got an excuse as to why you haven't gone to the gym, or you haven't been able to sort out, for example, if you've got kids where you can't get childcare. I mean, we're living in the 21st century. There is so many options. Just don't give up. Just keep looking and finding that solution, because it does exist. And I think that was my driver, was just like, yes, it was money because I didn't have it. But it was like, I'm not going to let this go. I'm not just going to stop and let this not be something that I can do. And on like kind of the childcare side, for people that do have kids and, wanting to go into a career or into recruitment, I had split up with her dad. And so managing childcare did become really difficult. But then I thought, right, well, what do I need to do? And just kind of broke it back. And I went to the extent of buying a house. But I bought my first house. It was not great. It was not very nice. It needed loads of work, but it was a 3-bedroom like masonette. And so it had a spare room. So it meant that I could have a live-in au pair. So it was financially much more viable for me to do that. And there was someone always there for my daughter. She didn't like it. It wasn't great for her for a while, but she looks back now and she literally said to me, she came to work with me the other day and she was just like, I'm so thankful and inspired by you. And I was like, that is like the best, most amazing thing that I could have out of all of this process and journey. And like, yeah, people would describe it as hard work, but it is what you make it.
Do you look back
Absolutely
at
love that.
your journey, Steph, and you're like, I can't believe like how much I've accomplished? Like, because I'm just thinking now, like people don't understand the success you have now. Like you making millions of pounds in your business. You've built a substantial amount, but you telling me that story of like buying the house, which is still an accomplishment. But do you look back and you're like, shit, I've done so much? Do you have those moments a lot? Or
I think I don't really, but the other day, it was probably about a couple of months ago, my mum forwarded me an email that I sent her, and it actually brought tears to my eyes because I was like, oh my God, sometimes you just forget, you're in the mix of everything that you're doing. And it was an email that I sent to her about a family party. It was like one of the kids were, it was their birthday. And I'd just emailed back to her and I said, oh, Mum, I can't afford to go. I was like, I don't have any money. I don't have any money for my travel. I can't even buy, I think it was my nephew or no, it would have been my niece. And I don't even have any money to buy them a present. And she just forwarded to me and she was like, look at where you are now. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, it's crazy. Like I think about, I didn't even have money to eat. Like it was that bad at times. But that was all my own doing. I chose to leave home. I chose to, my mum and dad weren't terrible people. I chose to make all the decisions that I did. So I do, okay, not in everyone's situation, but most of the time you create the life that you live.
yeah, I love that. That gave me goosebumps when you read out the email thing. I literally got goosebumps. That was crazy. We're going to get into some BD strategy soon. I know people are sitting at the end of their desk like, come on, give us the BD. We're going to get into that in a second, but I love your story. The last thing I just want to touch upon with your story, Steph, is there was a point when you started to see more success, and the word you used specifically was you had an addiction to success. Why an addiction to success? I mean, it kind of makes sense in terms of, your story, but can you just go a bit deeper into that? Like, how did that play out in your life, that kind of addiction to success?
Yeah, so I think it derives from like me always wanting to be the best. So I think the addiction is like if you're in a position or you have an aspiration to build your own company, if you're not trying to be the best at doing that, you're probably gonna struggle. Well, not even you're just gonna struggle, and it's probably not gonna happen. Because the reason why that became such an important part for me is because it's every part of what it was that I would do. It has to be the best. It has to be the best that I know, like better than the service that we provide, the every consumer that I would, with the candidate, the client that I would come into contact with, I would do my very best to make sure that they had what they needed. And I think that is what I almost described as being the addiction to success, because I just wanted it to be the best. And yeah, there's been like loads of challenges along the way. Absolutely. There's been times where I felt like it's not going to work, or, being successful is just too difficult. And I still feel like that now. I think, the business is in a great place, but there's so much more for me to get from the business and the people in it, and there's so much more to come. But it's just not giving up, not giving up, not stopping, not becoming complacent, thinking that even if you get to a business of my size, so we've got, I think it's 26 staff now, even at that stage, don't become comfortable. You've got 26 people in the business that rely on you. You're paying their salary, their wages every month. And yes, they're bringing something to the company as well, but people rely on you. And I think that's one thing that's helped me through that kind of addiction to success, is knowing that people are relying on me.
That's really interesting.
Even if it's just a candidate or a client that's relying on you, that you're not letting them down. And that would be the thing, that I would work all night sometimes, or I'd work until like 2 a.m, because I didn't want to let people down. I wanted to be able to provide the candidates and clients the services that they need. But additionally to that, because I was a billing consultant for years in the business as well, but additionally to that, people needed to have their reviews. People needed to know when the next salary review is going to be. People needed to know how they're getting on. People needed coaching. So like all of that sort of stuff had to be fitted in as well. So it's, and I was like, well, I've said I'm going to do that. I can't let somebody down. So I think that helped as well.
Really interesting. Was there like something that happened that started the spiral to the addiction to success? Was it like, did you buy something, or did something happen, or did you bill like a really high amount? Was there like a moment in time?
That's a really good question. I don't think there was a moment in time that stands out that made me think like, right, okay, this is like my addiction. I think, well, maybe there was. If I go back to when I started recruitment, initially I definitely wasn't addicted to it. Like in my first year and a half, I remember thinking about how I was as a consultant, and on reflection, I was shit. If I can say that out loud.
Yeah, of course.
I wasn't good, and I didn't have a passion or a love for it. It was when I realized that I was good at it that I started to get like people telling me, oh, Steph, like you're really good at this. Or people used to then start to praise me, and I started to believe in myself. So perhaps it was that made me more passionate about what it was that I did. I think the addiction to success probably came from when I had a Leah and people telling me that, oh, you're not even going to go back to work. And me just wanting to be like, probably growing up with thinking that I'm not the best. So I needed to almost prove it to myself. So perhaps it was a little bit, derives a little bit from that.
Yeah, really interesting.
Amazing how many successful people draw energy from that kind of chip on their shoulder to prove people wrong. I've heard it so many times, but it's so powerful if you use it to your advantage and you don't let it, get you down, and you use it as you did, Steph, like as a, I'm going to prove you wrong kind of thing. So I love that.
Yeah, it is. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and it's interesting listening to people's stories, because you do come across a lot of stories where people have had an experience in their life that they're trying to change because it was quite significant what might have happened or how they might have felt. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. So we've thank you for sharing your story, Steph. I could speak about this like for the whole podcast, but I know our audience love to hear like specific BD tactics. So I'd love to move on to that side of the pod now. For people that don't know, I'm not sure if you're billing currently, Steph. I didn't ask that stupidly, but I know that you're a 600K biller. It's substantial numbers, very successful. What were some of your go-to BD strategies that you use, and maybe some that you teach your consultants as well?
So I think the first thing, which might sound a little bit vague, but you have to be consistent. So even if you're job heavy or you're candidate heavy, you can't let the other one go because you won't have a pipeline. So being consistent, first of all. The other side, the other BD tip is, who are you going to ring, and who are you targeting as your client base and your candidate base? Because sometimes people think, the candidate targeting isn't as important, but if you're going to focus on your BD, then you need to know who you're calling and why. And if you're just picking up the phone willy-nilly because you want to make sure you're getting your BD calls done, you're going to be less effective. There's different types of BD that I'll go through with my team, and that I would do. So you've got your quantity BD, which is you've got a candidate, for example, and you just want to get them out to the market. So you've sent out, for example, a mail out, but you also are on the phone and you want to quickly just identify, does this client want this person? You might not be getting through to the right person all the time, and it's quick quantity calls. You've just done loads of them because you've picked up that at the right time, this client is looking for someone. Then you have your more quality side of the BD. So those are your really focused target clients. So if you have an area that is your focus area, so it might be location, it could be specialism, for example, but you've got your, say, 20 clients that are your focus. Those are the ones that you want to be calling weekly, bi-weekly, and going out to visit, so that you're actually building a picture of how their recruitment strategy works. Because without that, when you're doing business development, you can't provide a solution. So you're just selling something really cold. You don't even know, it's probably not going to fit what they want because you don't know what they want. And so sometimes people get a little bit stuck with that BD because they don't know where to go next. So it's building on, like, you've got one bit of information. So on the next call, what information do you actually want? How are you going to get it? And just spending that time planning beforehand so that you can get the most from your calls. I think that's super effective.
It's really helpful. Thank you for sharing that, Stephanie. So I think for me, I completely get that the trigger point for the volume BD method is probably a good candidate, right? Because you're choosing a good candidate, speccing them in. Just so I can clarify in my own simple mind, what is the trigger point for the more specific BD strategy? Like, what's the thing that gets them to say, oh, cool, yeah, I'll speak to you, Stephanie?
So the trigger point for the client to speak to us, do you mean as like the recruiter? It is the way. So there's a few things. One is if you're assumingly you're getting past the gatekeeper, so you would have had to master that. And getting past the gatekeeper could be, okay, there's little things like timings and stuff, so knowing when the best time to call is, but also getting to know them. They are not the decision maker, but they're the person that picks up loads of the calls like you. So how are you going to stand out? So building a little bit of a rapport with them, bringing some humor to the phone call is going to help them remember you, and having a reason that you need to speak to that decision maker, I feel like is an important trigger. Because if you can get past that gatekeeper, because your reason is so important, they're going to believe that and think, right, oh my God, yeah, I need to put you through. So a couple of different things that I would do, and it's dependent on who I was calling and again what time, but it will be something like, I've sent them an email, it's confidential, it's really important I speak to them about it. If, for example, decision maker is focused on finance, then I say I've sent them some financial information they've asked for. I need to follow up with them over a call because there's some confidential information I can't share in the email. It could be something else, such as they've just emailed me and they've asked me to give them a ring. And actually you get through to the person who was like, oh no, that wasn't actually what I said. It was I'd emailed you. And so I thought it was a good time to follow up. So you just like, there's loads of different ways that you can get past them. But those were just a few things. I think that people sometimes worry a lot about, like, oh, am I going to say the wrong thing? Can't really make a mistake. No one's going to call up someone being rude and you're always going to be, friendly and things like that. So just try different things and be creative.
Love that. What I would love to do is if we could go back to like a typical day of BD for you, and you've kind of already explained a bit of the process, but I kind of want to know how it's structured throughout the day now. So if you were to sit down and do a typical day of BD, how would it start? If you get into the office at 7 or whenever, could you just map out the day for us and how you would structure your day, if that's okay?
Yeah, of course. So
awesome.
Between 7 and 9 is a great time to reach two types of people. So you've got your candidates. So if you are a little bit job heavy, then I would use that time to speak to candidates. Cool. If you're not and you're job short and you've got a good candidate pool, then I'd use from, say, for example, 7:30 until 8:30, 9 o'clock to speak to clients. And I would, in that time, you'll get, if it's the first time you're doing it, you'll get loads of no answers or you'll get like voicemails. So then you start to get some people that answer, and then you put them into a list so you know who's going to be the people that answer in the morning. But what you're getting out of those phone calls is you're getting hold of people that actually aren't available at typical times in the day, like your head teacher, for example. So that's usually been, you might get 1 out of 3 days of doing it, but as a head teacher, you've been trying for 2 months, for example. So in the education market specifically, that's a good thing to do. And also it's something that you might get a school that needs somebody for the day they're stuck, we're in a teacher short market, so that's another reason. So you're calling them because you have somebody available, so it's a specking time.
Cool.
Then after that, you go from 9 till 12, for example, and again, that time is a good time for business development, and you'll be focusing on particular people, for example, in the organization, or for education recruitment, specifically for a Senko or a business manager, so that you're targeting your calls to different types of people, because you might have that list of 20 schools, and you might have called for the head teacher and you're not getting anywhere. So who else can you call within that establishment that's going to be able to give you more information and get you somewhere further? So that's a good time to do that. Cool. Also, it will be following up. So business development around following up any jobs that are still open, updating your client. That's an important part of it. It could also be if it's, for example, a school that they did use you, but they aren't anymore. So focus on your BD around calling them. Cool. And then 12 till 1 is a really great time to get hold of candidates. So we would use that because they're on lunch. 1 until 2 would usually be less focused around calls, depending on what else is happening on the desk. But if you want it to be super BD focused, I'd actually pick up BD again from 1 until say 2:30, and not because of the timing of clients and how they work. I wouldn't do it between 2:30 and 3:30. And then I try again in that period after 3:30, when you might not get many answers, but you'll get the heads and the decision makers more. Cool. So yeah, that's how the breakup of the day would be. And I'd also, just additionally to that, I set myself goals for each time period, because it's really easy to get distracted in recruitment, like you're ever in a busy office or you've got emails coming in, you've got other stuff going on. So if I'm setting a call period, I'm setting, right, how many calls do I want to make? What's my high value objective that I want to get out of my call? What's my second objective if I don't get my first, so that I can tell myself I've had a good BD period or I've not had a good one. And it gives me a little bit of a like, yeah, I did that great, or okay, I need to do better on the next one because this happened.
Love that. And you'll do that with like every sprint, Steph. You'll have like a list of targets that you're trying to hit.
Yeah.
Sprint. Yeah, love that. That's really cool. What I'd love to get into is, because you've hired a lot of people, and I feel like it's really tough to grow a business. People, I know it's tough because me and Ben have a business. And I think what is hard to do is understand good systems and processes. And just building a business can be tough, and scaling it. What was one of the most important first hires you made, Steph, that kind of started to change your business? I'm really fascinated in that.
I was thinking about this, and I thought to myself, how it's a hard one, because I think I made a lot of mistakes, and there was many hires that I made that weren't right. And that probably wasn't just down to them. It was down to the way I managed, the way I didn't have many processes and things in place straight away. So I wouldn't say there was like one person or one time where I was like, this just changed the direction. I feel like it's just evolved over time. And it's evolved because of the processes that we've put in place, and because of the hiring strategy. I never had one for years. I was just winging it, really. And that was really important. I should have had that in place sooner and earlier on. And knowing what core competencies I look for in people, so that I was measuring it in the same place every time that I was interviewing, rather than going off, I got a good vibe from them.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Which I definitely used to do for a while. So I think finding people that match your culture and the journey of where you want to go with the business is really difficult. And I'd say it's been, and I'd say it's been the same for quite a lot of other business owners as well. It's just being able to work out a process that finds those people efficiently, and it's the right person. I'm still making mistakes now. So it is difficult, but if you've got a process, you follow it, and some bits of it don't work, then it's a lot easier for you to tweak it to get to the right place, rather than you're just kind of winging it. You don't really know. You couldn't write down exactly what you're doing because it's not the same every time. So you don't actually know what's going wrong. So I think if I did that earlier on, that probably would have helped me grow quicker.
Really interesting. If there was like a recruiter listening to this, which I suspect there will be kind of earlier on, and they're like, oh, I really want to scale. I want to be in Stephanie's situation. And they're like, yes, I need a better hiring strategy. Are there any like key things that you did? I'm sure there's lots of nuances to a good hiring strategy, so I don't expect everything, Stephanie, but are there like one or two things that you did that really made a big difference to the predictability of hiring better staff?
Yeah, so one of the things is always knowing where you want to be in the next, say, year to 2 years. I think if you're smaller, the next year's fine, because you need to know financially what's viable. So I think that's important. And what your goal is, because you might be thinking that you want to hire 3 people, but actually why? Like really thinking about why is important so that it contributes to your like end goal. So I think that's super important. And then the second thing I would say is being able to know that you have an induction process in place that is going to ensure that the people that you hire aren't going to be a waste of time, because they're going to be inducted through a process that you have found works. So if you're quite new and you haven't trained people before, it would be quite risky to take on 4 people at once because you haven't had success with one. So getting to that success point and knowing that you can train and upskill, 1 or 2 people will give you that like, okay, right, I know what works, I know what I need to do. Then hiring more people will work after that. I think the other part within the actual hiring strategy is looking at numbers. So a little bit like just recruitment is something that we do it anyway. It's like, how many people do you pre-screen? What happens in a pre-screen? We introduce 3 stages in our interview, which we found has worked really well, but we have different people in it. So instead of it just being me, for example, you've got different people's views, which I think helps. And being able to look at going back to how many people you pre-screen, how many people go to second, how many people go to third, then offer and actually start, and using those numbers to help you review them over a time period to help you improve them. I think that helps as well. And I think the other last thing, there is loads of stuff, but I think the other last thing is making sure you have really important key core competencies that you look for in people. So what is super important that you want in someone, and making sure that those core competencies are part of your interview process.
Interesting. Is there one particular thing that you look for when you're hiring in terms of like characteristics or traits?
So our core competencies are communication's one of them. There's something else which this isn't a core competency, but it's something that we look for in the answer that someone gives, is storytelling.
Oh, interesting.
That's interesting.
Well, haven't heard that one before. That's really interesting.
It's quite because our business, our clients derive, like growth of clients derive so much from a relationship. If people struggle to storytell, we find that they lack in their ability to be able to build relationships with clients. And so we found storytelling is something that when they do that in interview, and ironically it's like it matches so well. When people can storytell, they are great recruiters, because they're engaging and you're like, oh, that's really interesting. So that's just one of the things as well.
That's brilliant. I've never heard that before, but it's so true. I remember one of my mates, Sam, Max Levine?
Yes.
We had a mate who was always such a good storyteller, and I used to be so jealous of him because we could be around a crowd, like there'll be like all of our friends around each other, and he just used to engage people so quickly. And I was like, how are you doing that? But it was because he told a story from start to finish so well. You felt like you were there with him. It was amazing. Yeah. And I was like, I got so annoyed with him, but over time I was like, okay, like I can build this skill, but for some reason he's just managed to master it a lot sooner. But it's a really good point. I think it's storytelling is so important.
How do you ask them to tell a story in their life? Like I'm guessing it's elicited by a question, but what question are you asking them to get that story out, Steph?
So they're all competency-based questions, which focus on, when I set them up, if it's me doing it or if it's someone else doing it, we'll always say to them, right, we want specific examples. So on time, the place, like the actual situation. And some people really struggle with that. And if they aren't able to do that, that in itself would be a negative towards their scoring within the interview process.
Wow.
Because it helps us see they've actually had an experience of doing that, which is one of the core competencies, but also they're having to tell a story about what it is that exactly happened. And again, you'll have people that will come with like, well, they'll give you a really short answer. And then you'll have people that will give you the whole story, and you just completely see it, you believe it, you know, whether it's true or not. They might have just told a great story, and that's great even still, because you're never really going to know. And it's part and parcel of being a recruiter, is that you have to be able to share stories about yourself, about situations. With a candidate, you need to be able to share a story about the job that they're going to be going into, the whole picture of it. So yeah, that's how it comes, that they basically should be telling the story.
Love that. That is so, like Ben said, I just want to ditto that I've never heard someone say that in the interview process of like picking out telling stories. I think that's genius. That's so cool.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, and I think that's
hopefully I think it works.
Yeah, and it makes complete sense. Yeah, it just makes complete sense.
But not one top biller has said that as well, but they probably are storytelling every single day.
Yeah.
But they just haven't like understood that that's the skill they're using, or maybe they have, but they call it something different. It's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, even when I listen to your podcast, I listen to the people on it, and I think they, like, the way that they talk about stuff, you know, like, they're successful because of it. Again, it's intriguing.
Yeah, and they're building up a story of some sort, aren't they? In most cases. Yeah, really interesting. What have been, because again, I am looking to, so this is a bit of a selfish question, but I'm sure other people can get information from it as well. Me and Ben are looking to scale our business. I just want to understand from your perspective, from successfully scaling, Steph, what have been some of the biggest kind of aha moments, the biggest moments where you're like, oh shit, yeah, okay, this was the right move, or that was the wrong move, or I learned a big lesson here? Is that anything in mind?
I think one of the first ones was having too high a client, too much saturation within one client. So I lost a big client, I think about 3 years into the business it was roughly, and it made a big dent on just the pressure of where business came from. And so I know not to do that, not to saturate ourselves so much with one client again. We just would say it wouldn't be the case that we wouldn't necessarily fill their bookings, but we wouldn't spend all of our time on it. And the second thing I would say was, like, the aha positive was having a clearer structure within the business. So I am a perfectionist and like to know that everything's running the best it can possibly be. So want to get involved in everything, but that just doesn't work for scalability. So going from not being that is quite a challenge, to being the person that just oversees stuff. And I think the biggest thing that helped with that is just like believing in people, and believing in people isn't enough, but it definitely helps. I think also making sure it's just super clear, what is it that is the outcome that we're all working towards? Do they know? Is it just sitting in my brain, or is everybody else on that journey as well? And do they know? Because you could say it to somebody, but it might not mean they actually understand it. So just getting people to like talk to you about what they think it is. And then you know that they get it, they understand it, and it will happen because they're the one telling you about it as well. I think that structure looked like having, so it was super flat. I was basically the manager of everyone, and just was working like crazy. And I think I had somebody that came into the business that helped me just look at, right, who have we got, what's needed within a management team, who could sit under that management team, so that people weren't just coming to me, because it was literally like, just go to Steph and speak to Steph. And that did take time. And the thing that helped it the most, not saying just go have a baby, but having my most recent child did help, because I was not in the business. So I wasn't available for people to go to. So if you were going to create scalability and structure, it's actually just making really clear-cut lines of communication that mean that other people don't just come to you. There's someone in front that can actually take that question and manage it. Having just a clearer management structure and saying no, because I want to always help people. I always want to be, oh yeah, I'll help you, I'll do this. So it's my own discipline and I found myself doing this recently, being back at work 5 days a week. I'm just like, no, I need to rein it back in, say no, and remember the lines of communication, and just reinforce it.
Love that.
Really
Great
interesting.
tip, Steph.
You said there was a person that you said you hired that helped you to organize the different management structures. Who was that person? Like, did they have experience with other businesses, or were they just really skilled operationally? Like, maybe you could give us some insight on that person.
Yeah, so it was somebody that was she's actually been always around throughout my whole journey of me starting the business, and she'd worked with Educate Staffing as a consultant. So her name's Elizabeth Ewan, and she was somebody that worked with my then business partner, and she helped his business scale and had a history of doing it with Michael Page as well. And she's a very people person, in the sense of she will look at the people structure and what's happening with people, whether it's your appraisals or your reviews or your and processes, and help with that. She's not an operational person, but she helps look at basically what's needed, whereas was very much channeled towards where's the ROI, where's the ROI, like that's a good thing, but it doesn't actually help when you have to think about putting into a place actual systems for people to grow.
Interesting. And did you hire full-time, or was she more of a consultant that came in kind of part-time basis to help you with that, Stephanie?
She was a consultant, so she started with me, I think something like 1 day a month, or maybe even half a day a month, and then we had got up to increasing to work with her once a week, and then we've just literally I've just departed, if that's the right word, with working with her. We still speak now all the time, and she works with my sister's business as well, but we've got the structure's working really, really well, and so it's helped for probably, I think, about 2, maybe even 3 years she's worked with me.
Wow, amazing. I'm sure a lot of it was to do with your own discipline, initiative, intelligence, but I think hiring people outside that have been there and done it is something, is really valuable. And I probably think a lot of recruitment firms would grow faster if they did that more often, like hired people that had experience in scaling and or hiring the right people. So that's really interesting.
I think it's something that people disregard because you don't realize. It's like, when you don't know what you don't know. So if you aren't engaging and networking with people of that kind of level of experience, you don't see a benefit in it. And I've just started working with a CTO who is through really networking, through someone that I met from a directors club. He started a business, ended up matching with something that I'm looking at doing with the technology side of the business, and just speaking to him, there's so much wisdom and ideas in what it is that he does, and he's got so much experience, but I would have never thought about doing something like that. I just thought, I know what I'm looking for. I know what technology our business needs. So it is definitely a good idea to speak to people out there that have got great experience.
What was I might be really naive, but for some reason, when I thought of someone coming in helping with the operations, I thought of hiring them full time. But you did a consultant 1 day a week. Like that's such a much better way to do it. Like, I'm going to take that, Steph. And for some reason, I didn't even contemplate that. So that's a great little golden nugget.
I definitely didn't think about doing it. I'd highly recommend. And it's I have it actually in 3 areas. So technology now, I did have it with people, but actually me and Elizabeth aren't working together right now at the moment. And then finance. So I have a CFO that comes in. He does about probably a month, 1 day to 2 days a month.
Cool. Okay.
And helps the finance manager with like really just high value things and things that we don't know about as well. And it's invaluable.
Wicked. Love that. So you've got some really kind of high value consultants coming in to prop up the business in certain areas to help it run smoother. That's cool. Love that. Pretty clever. I can't believe how quickly the time has gone. These podcasts literally, like I blink and like 50 minutes have gone by. I just want to touch upon one last subject because it's quite important to me. And I found out on another podcast that I think it's important to you as well, Steph. It's therapy. I've been doing therapy on and off for most of my life. I found it so beneficial. But what I would love to speak about is, I know a lot of people think that therapy and know therapy is useful for your personal life and dealing with personal issues, but therapy has had a massive impact on my work life, like being more competent, being happy at work, being more self-aware, better at asking questions. Like these are all the knock-on effects that I've had from going to therapy. And I just wanted to understand maybe from your perspective, how has therapy helped you specifically with business? Has there been any kind of things that you've noticed?
Yeah. I mean, everything that you just said, then I can like resonate with. I think that you don't go to it or think about it in your professional life, but it has, I think, changed so much about the way that I communicate, the way that I deal with situations, the way that I handle pressure. Because it's like it gives you mechanisms to think about, kind of not coping strategies, but mechanisms on how to process and deal with things. And I think there's a little bit of a, possibly, maybe not so much now, but a stigma around therapy. You know, you've got a problem, there's something wrong with you. It's just I really see it as a development tool for yourself.
100%.
I think that, like someone said to me yesterday, was at a social yesterday. We did this pee thing after work. It was really fun, and we were out for drinks after, and we just went around and we were doing this like group thing together, where you say 3 things that you like about each other. It sounds so cringy, but actually one of the girls that's quite new thought of it. And one of the things that someone said is about me was that she was like, "Oh, you're always so calm and collected. Like I never see you stressed out." And I'm thinking, wow, like I cover that up well. But it is literally, if I didn't have anything like therapy or anything that I was doing to work on myself, I wouldn't have been able to achieve that kind of demeanor. So I think that it is a big standout.
Yeah, that's wicked. Yeah, the pressure is an interesting one in terms of sometimes just going and unloading what's on your brain can just release so much pressure, that especially if I do it weekly. And so I literally release so much shit and pressure just by speaking it. And it's amazing just by saying it out
it's
loud.
It's like letting it go. Yeah.
And it's so that in itself.
Otherwise it's like all busy in your head.
Yeah. And what's interesting about therapy is stuff comes up that you weren't even planning to speak about, which I think is even more fascinating. And you're like, whoa, we just went there and I had no idea we were going to. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%.
No, I'm glad you're
deep embedded stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But no, I'm glad you're an advocate for therapy, and people listening, I want more people to try it if they are scared of it or there is still that stigma attached around it, I think, Steph. But I'm a big advocate for it, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. And it's not that there's a lot of cheap services out there as well. People are like, oh my God, it's so expensive, but
that's so true.
It's not actually too crazy.
Yeah, that's a great point. I didn't even think about all the access people have to therapy and tools and stuff. Steph, thank you so much for coming. It was an absolute pleasure to get to know you, understand your story, and just speak with you for an hour. So thank you for your time and really appreciate you coming.
Thank you. Thank you both so much. Thanks, really, Steph. Really appreciate you having me on the pod. And I think that it feels really weird speaking about myself for an hour, and I feel like I should be asking you guys loads of questions.
No, it's not about us, Steph. It's about you. So that's what the audience wants. So you did the right thing.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, and I've really enjoyed it. And look forward to listening.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to this episode. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to subscribe on YouTube and Spotify. Tune in for another episode next week, and we look forward to seeing you again very soon. Peace and love.